Hello and welcome to the podcast with Hussain Haider Zaidi, the podcast that explores how product design can help emerging businesses. I'm your host, and today we have an exciting episode for you. So we will be talking to our guest Zain Adeel, who is a design manager in Motive and who has years of experience in the product-based transportation and fleet safety industry. So in this episode, we'll be deep diving into the product design importance and impact on the startups and businesses, and how the experienced leadership can share their insights for the people who are pursuing their career into the product design. So, but before begin, let's get to know Zain Adeel a little better. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam, Zain.
So, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for giving us time. So let's start this. Can you tell us about your background, about your journey, what degree you chosen, and how you been into the product design?
Oh, well, to start, I'd say thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. In terms of my background, so Hussain, it's a little unconventional, but I guess that's true for so many designers in the field and a lot of colleagues who have had a similar background. I actually studied accountancy, ACCA specifically, and I was into sciences before that. So that's my start. I was studying ACCA. I used to just do design, graphic design on the side as a hobby. I used to sketch and paint a bit, but I just got exposed to the world of online forums where people were designing, album covers, logo designs, and whatnot. That's how I got into the habit of just exploring this particular aspect of design, and actually won some gigs online, like designing a logo for a small company, right? And that's how I saw potential within this industry that I wasn't aware of before. So I basically quit studying ACCA and ended up joining a really relatively small startup in Lahore, and called Shopistan. And that was the start of my career basically. I joined as a UI designer there, but the culture, it had an open office setup. I was completely unfamiliar to that kind of a setup. I wasn't even aware like we have those setups in professional, workplaces in Pakistan back then. So it was just amazing culture, really helpful, talented people, and that was my, you could say, first exposure to a professional environment. And that's where I started my career, and then I just kept working there. We were designing e-commerce experiences for many different brands, mainly fashion brands, and slowly we grew, and we started to cater to different industries, and then slowly we even started building our own products. That's how I started to learn more and more about what product design is, how it's different from just UI design, and all the other aspects and good things that come with it. And then slowly building up experience, learning more and more, I then got an opportunity to basically interview for Keep Trucking back then. This is, and I'm still there. It's Motive now after their rebrand. But this is my second workplace in that sense. And the journey of just, trying to become a better designer, trying to empathize more with users, I think that remains the same. So it's an ever-growing process that would, I believe, go on for many, many more years to come.
Right. That is very interesting that you shifted from ACCA to design. Was it a challenging to switching a entire different field to another field?
In terms of challenging, I would say it's maybe a different take on this, but for me, academics and specifically like mathematics or even accounting didn't come naturally, right? It was really hard for me to actually get good grades, an easy way to put this. For me, on the other hand, doing something on the computer like designing a poster in Photoshop or something came very easily to me. I really enjoyed it. I could find myself in the state of flow while I was designing. So I was more familiar within those within that realm rather than academics. But I guess what was challenging was this understanding that if I make this shift, will this provide me is there basically a future in design, as an individual maybe who only looks forward to maybe do some kind of a job. I didn't necessarily ever thought about doing some kind of business. So for me, the biggest challenge was, will I be able to support my family if I build a career in design rather than become an accountant, chartered accountant, right? So that was the main challenge, understanding that, chartered accountancy, it seemed like a big thing to me, leaving all of that and then diving into a very different kind of field that I honestly didn't have any peers to get any information from. Like, I didn't have any mentors at that time who would have been able to tell me, oh no, it is a upcoming field. Computing and IT is going to be huge in Pakistan in the next 4 or 5 years. There was no one really to kind of guide me there, and I myself maybe was also not super motivated to read about or show interest to find out what's coming next in the industry. So that part was the only scary or challenging part, I would say.
Right, right. That is very interesting, knowing about how you shifted from ACCA to design side. That is really interesting. So, as you were a manager in Motive, so I want to know about what are the main challenges that you face as a manager, because you work in a product-based company. So, as a manager in a product-based company, so what are the main challenges that you have faced? Like, you have to communicate with the stakeholders, managing the people, and taking design decisions. This is also a big thing. So how do you cater out these things?
That's a very important question. I guess being a manager is a very different kind of like an experience than being just an IC or an individual contributor in a company. For me personally, I guess what is the most challenging part out of this, or most important, is managing people in terms of just making sure that they are well motivated, they are hungry, they are trusted, making sure that they feel a sense of ownership in whatever problems they're solving, whoever they're working with. I think so. People management would be the most challenging and also the rewarding aspect of being a manager. And then on the other hand. The entire other like parallel would be also to play the role of a design mentor, in the sense guiding them, directing them on what are better ways they can approach a particular problem. What in the realm of, I'm diving a bit deeper into this, but in the realm of like solving a particular problem, when they're designing a solution, what are some other ways they can explore different ideas. And then similarly, I guess, so I wouldn't necessarily say this is a big part of being a manager, but stakeholder expectations in terms of working with other teams. I think how you can play that role to kind of bridge differences and or improve communication across teams, when working with partners in the product team or the engineering team. I think that's also a really big part of being a manager, to be able to elevate the general processes and communication in a company. But those would still be secondary to the primary objective, which is making sure that people in your team are they feel like they are trusted, and they're understood, and there's someone who would listen to them when they're going through sometimes tougher days where they maybe feel like they're stuck somewhere, or if they're just going through anything else, they should feel like there's someone there who would be available. In the, I would say that would be the best term.
Right, right. So Zain, as we're talking about how product design can help the emerging businesses, the VC backup startups and the entrepreneurs. So for the reason is to create the importance of product design and to create more opportunities in this domain. So if we can talk about product design, so how you elaborate what is the success criteria to someone to judge how product design can help him within his business to make a growth in his business?
That's a really good question, and I wouldn't necessarily have the best answer here, but I guess it would really depend on the kind of business, right? But when we talk about emerging businesses, smaller businesses, newer markets, where design can play a vital role is defining problems in a lens that is more focused on the user, with a very a deeper focus on the user and their problem, right? From a business standpoint, I guess there are different reasons to basically move into an industry or start a business somewhere. But from a design standpoint, I think the unique value we add is providing a special lens from which we can show other folks in the company, a business person or a more engineering oriented person, how the problem they're trying to solve actually impacts the user, what kind of impact it has in their life, and what are like some really innovative ways to solve their problem. So I guess in terms of like showing impact, there are many different ways, and I don't know, like going deeper into this would make sense, but working with the users, talking to them, utilizing all the tools in the toolkit a designer holds in terms of the kind of researches that can be done to really understand and define a user's problem. And then again, when we are designing a solution, it could be anything like imagine like an e-commerce app, a very basic kind of an e-commerce app, right? Some even small businesses might want to sell like handmade stuff on their website, or you start a very basic small marketplace, right? Who are they looking to sell to, right? How do they know what the buyers are looking for, right? Those are one things. Like meeting the demand is just one aspect, but the kind of experience you provide ensures that they would come back and buy from you again, right? And now what would what would encourage them to visit your website again? One would be the product that they're buying, but a big aspect would be the entire experience they had purchasing that product on your website, or your whatever it might be. It could be an app or it could be a website, and that encompasses everything, right? If they had to talk to support, if they had to navigate through your website, if they had to search for an item, when they're placing an order, how long they had to wait for the order, right? How the order was received, how it was packaged. All of these tiny things are where designers will take certain decisions to intentionally build the experience a certain way, and the goal is to basically optimize a user's experience, and the more you can do that, the more the user would want to shop with you again in this example, right?
So is there any typical ROI metrics to measure the success criteria?
I guess so. That's a really good question, and sometimes it's not as easy to quantify a lot of the benefits, or the value design adds to a business, because at the very end, business metrics are more related to how many sales you had, or your volume of sales, for example, or the basket size of the basket per user, drop off rates and stuff like that. It's very hard to sometimes pinpoint like what particular design decision actually is driving that particular metric. There are ways to do A/B tests to measure it from a quantifiable manner. But I guess what's tougher is to put a qualitative measure somehow in place, right? And that can be done through just talking to customers, getting reviews from customers on their experiences, and these kind of ways. But yeah, I guess it's a bit challenging to really get good, deep, quantifiable metrics that are dependent on sometimes rather intangible, more, I would say, feel-based experience criteria that you may be designing into a particular product, right? We go through that a lot, right? When we buy a product, sometimes we don't necessarily know exactly why we like it so much, right? I can give you a basic example of like buying a phone, or for example a keyboard, right? A wireless keyboard. The job of a keyboard is for you to be able to press different keys, and that is it, right? But there are so many keyboards in the market, right? So there's an element of finding a niche, really focusing on a particular aspect of a product, right? How the keystroke feels, the size and form of the keyboard, can it be packaged easily so you can carry it with you? How it looks on your table with the rest of your items on the desk. So there are so many things that have less to do with the core function of a product, but more has to do with how someone would perceive it or feel about it, right? And those are hard to quantify, I would say, and that's where the real the creativeness of design comes in, where it could speak to someone's feelings, and that could be one way it converts someone to a customer or a user.
Right, right. So as for now, we are talking about the importance towards the product design in the emerging businesses. So I want you to speak about the role of design in building of a strong brand identity for startup, and how product design can help communicate the values and the personality of a company. I mean, the goals and the loyalty of a company.
Yeah, so I guess when you say design, depends like what that word means in this context, right? Technically, everything is design, right? When you talk about a brand, like each and everything about the brand is design. It could not just be the actual design in terms of what's visual. It could be, the how the brand speaks, right? How the brand writes, and all of these things are or should be intentional, and they should align with the goal in terms of how you want people to perceive your brand, right? How you want people to feel when they hear that brand speak, or when they are reading basically any message from that brand. It could even be an advertisement, right? So design has a huge role here, and has done so for many different brands, where sometimes to find a better market, they do an exercise where they maybe shift their focus, they change how they look, how they speak, maybe to connect with the audience better. A lot of times they want to blend in more to the cultural norms, uh, you know um, uh, and again, this is a very random example, but if you look at advertisement, a lot of brands, local brands in Pakistan, I hope, I have a couple examples where they incorporate music into their advertisement, and there is a shift towards what kind of music that they are adding to their advertisement, and that has more to do with what the culture, or a particular segment of society is listening to, right? These are all intentional aspects that are being designed in some way or form, right?
Now, if we could talk about this specifically, the personality or the loyalty of a brand. So how do you communicate about these things?
Communicate in many different ways, right? Like, um, I would kind of maybe dig deeper into when you say loyalty of a brand, like what do you mean exactly? Because from the perspective of like, developing brand guidelines, it's one way to redefine what the brand is supposed to stand for, and design can go the extra mile, giving it an identity which puts it in a slightly unique position. So maybe it stands out from similar brands, right? In the market, it could be as a unique identifier of some sort. But what do you mean by loyalty in this sense?
Well, I mean, the loyalty means that how some unique point that in the market of or a typical niche that the product has, but their competitive analysis, if we can make a competitive edge towards this startup. So what is the main thing that more of a USP about the product in terms of design?
Got it. So I guess, I would break that down into two different parts. When you talk about the brand, right, there is a way to kind of think of the brand as its own entity, versus whatever service it provides or whatever product you are selling, right? And the experience of that product predominantly would have a lot more to do with function, right, over form. And then brand is basically something that would attach itself, or I would say, surround the product, right? So the biggest value would be learning the market better, learning the user's needs better, and optimizing the product using design. That's the most value design can add to an organization. And that could be by maybe doing better research, more research about customers than some other brands might do, right? That'll be exploring more innovative ideas to serve customers than some other brands might do, right? That is what would differentiate you, from maybe your competitors. And branding is a good part of it, but the actual utility of a product or service, will be paramount in my opinion. And that's where, for example, product design or just design in general plays a bigger role.
So as we're discussing about the impact of product design over the startups and entrepreneurs, so if we talk about the people who are pursuing their career into the product design, so I have a question that is typical about your approach that you use for designing a product or a new project. So how do you approach the process of a designing for a new project, and can you walk us with your typical process and your creative process?
Sure, I can do that. I guess my experiences would speak to, my experiences and might not necessarily apply to when you say new product, like to when a business is basically coming up with a new product, right, or finding their market. I wouldn't say luckily, because I would love that experience too sometime in my life. But most of the products that I've worked on, we do have an understanding of the market we are serving, right? I think that makes it a bit easier, because the typical market you serve, and the users that you're building softwares for, and what are some problems that still exist, or what are certain parts of their day or their work that you can optimize even further, right? That's very different from building a completely new business, and or finding a new market, right, where you have to actually interview and find out what kind of problems people have in a certain segment, and then figure out how or where you might build something to alleviate their pain, or improve their workflows in any way. And again, this is more into like what kind of a product you're building. It's because entertainment or social media is like a completely different thing, right? But in terms of processes where we are improving workflows, or helping solve a problem that is maybe that has been existing and we have not solved yet, I think we start by just talking to our customers or users, right? It can be done using many different methods. I think we don't go into any specifics of the actual kind of ways to do interviews, but largely it's about talking to them, and literally is as simple as that. You just talk to many different customers or users, right? You understand how they go about their day, right? What their day consists of. And again, I think this is where you contextualize the problem, right? Sometimes it's called like framing the problem as well, where you understand what they do apart from what you are looking to help them with, right? I can give you a very basic example. Like, we are talking on Google Meet at the moment, right? But before you could open Google Meet, you had to turn on your computer, right? You had to make sure your laptop was charged, right? You had to come to this place to actually turn on your laptop. This is the larger context within which you were performing this one task, right? Similarly, when we are talking to our customers, they use our software for something, right? But their day consists of more things that they have to accomplish, right? To work, or to perform their job, right? And we could just be a small part of their day, right? So it also really helps understanding what else they do in their day, and how best can we fit inside of their day. So when they're moving from one software, for example, to our software, and then they have to move to a third software later in the day, we help them transition through their different use cases better. This is the larger context that a lot of companies miss. They think in the bubble of the problem that they're solving and their own softwares. But yeah, and again, I'm diverging. So do correct me back into the main question when I do that. But yeah, primarily just talking to customers, really understanding how they spend their day, what they do, right? And then trying to identify areas where they face frustrations in terms of the experiences they have to go through, products they use, other areas where maybe they're spending so much time, but with how computing can help with automate so many tasks, can something radical be done there, which can maybe automate a process that they do many times a day, right? That's such a basic thing, but there are so many industries that are still running using paper, right? They're documenting things on paper, they're scanning, they're printing. While all of this could be digitized in some way, and could be shared from one to many instantly, rather than involving actual logistics and whatnot. So it's I'm just throwing in examples here and there, but primarily talking to customers, finding their problems, understanding them, and then kind of redefining where you can come in, what you can provide as a service. What is your business good at, and then actually building or designing a solution that would solve a particular problem. It might be automating a workflow. It might be designing a workflow in such a way which saves that particular user some more time.
So then,
Yeah.
yeah. So in most of time, this is difficult to take direct feedback from stakeholders and working out and getting some user research. So if we don't have that budget and the company didn't allow us to go to the market and ask the stakeholders or the or the person who directly using this product can give their direct feedback to you. So in this process, in this scenario, how we can get around the thing?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I guess there's the entire spectrum of different kind of businesses and how much they invest in design, right? And how strong of a research culture they have, design research culture they have in their organization. I guess on one end, maybe would be a company that hardly does any kind of research. I still disagree that you can build a product like this. So in the company's life cycle, there would have been a period where they did a lot of research, right? That's how they build their product. But slowly they maybe move away from that. So in these kind of organizations, there's a big reliance on just talking to their existing customers and servicing them, listening to more ideas or improvements that they are requesting for, and designing those improvements in the product directly. You will hear from customers, right? If a customer is using your product and they're not happy with something, they will let you know, right? Through many different ways. And the other would be that there's a huge reliance on the customer success team to do something very similar, right? Where they are constantly in touch with their customers, and if they hear any feedback on a particular feature that they're using and they don't like it, or they think it could be better, that's how you find out what you can improve, right? And I'm just maybe focusing too much on servicing user needs in terms of problems that they're sharing directly with you, or problems you are identifying by talking to them. But a huge chunk of design work that you actually do in practice is just building new capabilities, solving completely new problems, right? And that's something else that's going on the side. And slowly, if you move to the other end of the spectrum, then there are companies that have a stronger design culture, stronger design research culture, where they are doing more primary research in terms of just understanding the users better. It's not necessarily tied to a particular feature or any work, right? They're just talking to the users just to understand them better, right? And then somewhere in the middle would be companies that do some amount of research. It might not be a designer doing the research, but might be collaboration between the product team. But that research might be focused on what we are looking to build, right? What we're looking to, what small problem we're looking to solve, or what improvement we're looking to make in the product. Their research might only be constrained to that particular, problem at one point in time.
Right. So then, as you are a hiring manager also, so if we can talk about, as you taken a lot of design interviews, so if we talk about some common mistakes about the junior designers make and how they can avoid them, can you make a statement about them?
That's actually a really good question. And yeah, I think in my capacity now, I've been able to interview a lot of designers actually for various different positions, and actually in different geographical areas as well, right? So there are of course differences that have to do with market, what kind of companies, what kind of an interviewing culture you have in a particular place, right? Specifically talking about Pakistan, I would say that lately I've seen a huge shift, and I don't know, it's most likely would be due to the stronger communities that are now in Pakistan, where people talk about design online. There are communities on Facebook. UXTP is one such community that I'm also a part of, and so there's a lot of knowledge sharing there now, and designers have really changed how they are presenting their work in interviews, right? But I guess in terms of like common mistakes people make, honestly, the primary mistake would be that it you should never get the impression that someone was not prepared, right? And the way that happens is where you feel like they didn't test how long their case study would take to present. It's a 40-50 minute interview. Most companies, by the way, share some kind of guidelines on what the interview will be like. So designers should know like what to expect beforehand. But sometimes when we go in the actual, and I'm talking about portfolio presentation as the basic kind of an interview, which is the most common interview where you show your work. Sometimes candidates don't have enough work to show. They are done in the first 15 minutes. So I was talking about common mistakes designers make while interviewing, right? The most common is not managing their time well. And that just seems like they're not well prepared, right? And that's the last thing you want someone to get a sense of, that you seem like you're not prepared enough for the interview, right? I mean, you might have a week or so to prepare. So you should kind of test your case study. You should do a mock presentation with yourself or something to make sure that the amount of work you're presenting takes up the amount of time you have, right? And you should make the most of, if you feel like you're presenting just one case study and you can wrap it in like 15 minutes, then maybe you should present more work. You should make the most of the 40 or 50 minutes you have in the presentation, right? So that's the most common mistake I see. Yeah. And I was just gonna mention a couple more. I mean, the other common mistake would be not aligning the kind of projects you are presenting with the kind of role you're applying for, right? In some cases, it might make sense to show how much breadth of experience you have. Like you worked on apps, you worked on more enterprise products, you worked on maybe other kind of consumer products and whatnot. But you should get a sense, as an interview, you should get a sense that the projects they're presenting have been cherry picked for the kind of role someone is applying for, right? So that's the other kind of common problem.
So Zain, if we can talk about Pakistani talent, specifically towards the product design. So what's your viewpoint on this? As many of the product designers from Pakistan are working in different companies in the world. So what's your viewpoint on the talent of Pakistan?
I think when we talk about talent, there are extremely talented designers in Pakistan, right? I would say generally one difference is, especially in product design, there are not a lot of companies in Pakistan that are deeply investing in product design, right? So from a talent standpoint, I think there are a lot of talented designers, but one again, this would be more of like a tip to provide would be that designers who are better able to showcase their design thinking stand out compared to talent which is more focused on the aesthetics, right? And more focused on the interface designing part of it rather than the entire process of product design. So that's a big distinction that I see within talent, that there are a lot of designers who are really focused on design thinking and improving that skill set more than focusing on their UI design and presentation skills. And it serves them, in my opinion, it serves them better than designers who are not necessarily focusing on design thinking, but more focused on how things look.
Thank you, Zain, for sharing the insights, and this is very best podcast for me because you have shared a lot of things that help the people, that also help for the startup owners, giving the insights of product design, how they can help, how they can take the help from product design, getting towards the brand loyalty and user needs, and how they can meet out these things.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for inviting me, Hussain.
So I hope this will be helpful for the people who is also pursuing the career into this domain, and some design hiring tips for the people as well. So thank you so much again for your time and this purposeful communication. Thank you.